Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Kormam Productions, here to talk about Quantum Leap, Season 2, Episode 2, titled Disco Inferno. The episode's description reads as follows. Sam has to save his host's younger brother from his obsessed father who wants him to go into the family business as a movie stuntman. The leap takes place on April 1st, 1976, and originally aired on September 27th, 1989. It was directed by Gilbert M. Shelton. He directed a grand total of 4 episodes of this series. And it is interesting to note that he also did 1 episode of Magnum P.I., the other Donald Bazzario series, the one that preceded this one. When this series was on Netflix and Hulu, neither one of these streaming services had this episode, which most likely came down to music rights issues, which this is a good time to finally bring up this topic. When the original DVDs of the series came out, it had a substantial amount of music change, and that's because Universal did not want to pay for the rights to all these songs. The music was replaced with generic soundtrack music, which many fans described as elevator music. Replacing the music upset a lot of fans, as the music was crucial to setting the time and place. And it should be noted that Season 1 was unaffected, but the rest of the series was affected. For instance, the season finale, MIA, had Georgia on My Mind, a Ray Charles song, replaced with something generic. And this especially upset fans because it had a direct tie to the series finale. I read a review of this episode recently that suggested that this lost episode, if you want to call it that, wasn't really worth it. That it wasn't really a good episode. And I disagree a bit. The episode itself, for the most part, falls in the okayish territory, but it's definitely worth it for 2 things. One, we get further backstory on Sam Beckett, as we learn about his brother, which does tie into a few episodes, including one later this season, and the season premiere of Season 3. It's also a good showcase for just how subtly awesome Dean Stockwell is. Before going any further, I will tell you a couple things. 1. This is not a spoiler-free video. If you haven't seen this episode, please go and check it out and come watch me. Secondly, if you like this video and want to support the channel, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Sam leaps in, and he's at a disco, which he looks extremely unthrilled about. A girl is dancing with him, and he just has a look on his face like he'd rather be anywhere else. We hear Sam narrate, "Disco, I would rather be dead," just before someone takes out a shotgun and shoots him. Sam goes flying through this glass thing, and wow, that's it. Sam Beckett is dead. The series is over. Well, I'd like to thank everybody who listened, and wait. Sam isn't dead, you say. The series is going to continue. Oh, okay. Well, you sure had me fooled there for a moment. As it turns out, Sam Beckett is not in fact dead. He's on the set of a movie. And okay, I gotta ask a question. How did Sam not notice the movie cameras pointed his direction? And the director, and the stagehands, and everybody else involved in making a movie. This won't be the last time I lodge this specific complaint. As I recall, there's a Season 4 episode where he's on a soap opera where something similar happens. As it turns out, Sam has leaped into Chad, a stuntman, in a family of stuntmen, as it turns out. He's helped up by his brother and his father. His brother is played by Chris Cam, who only has 26 credits to his name. He appeared on the series Coach for 48 episodes. as well as an episode of Married with Children, 21 Jump Street, and the 1994 Kevin Costner film Wyatt Earp. His father is played by Michael Green, who appeared in the movie Batteries Not Included, which is a personal favorite of mine from childhood. He has 119 more credits on his Internet Movie Database, including a TV movie, The Day Reagan Was Shot, playing George Bush, a couple of guest spots on Baywatch, and an appearance on Melrose Place. He died on January 10th, 2020, at the age of 86, which is fairly recently. The director is played by Peter Ornati, which really amused me because he plays Jack's dad on This Is Us, the other show that I regularly cover. I've pretty much gone through his credits before, so I'm not going to do so here. The director is not really interested in Chad's well-being. He just wants to move on because he's an hour behind schedule on the movie. This eventually gets Sam's dad pissed off because he seems more concerned about his schedule rather than the safety of the stuntman. He ends up decking the director and walking his kids off the movie. The director tries to appeal to his two sons, both of whom beg off. The two brothers get the stuntman equipment off of Sam, and Chris, Sam's brother, laments the fact that his stunt was 2 days away on Friday, and he wonders why his father had to quit now. Chris wants Sam to help change the mind of his father, and Sam agrees to do so, which is something he will regret doing. A woman approaches him and calls him crazy, saying he likes that in a man, and it turns out she's from a record label handling the music on the movie. She hands him a card. Sam follows this movie to the, I guess, what is the crew table, where they get drinks and food and stuff. And there's another woman there who's asking for Chad to introduce her new friend. Or his new friend, rather. But Sam doesn't remember this woman and gets slapped for his troubles. The guy that Sam leaped into is apparently quite the ladies' man. She ends up giving him a mood ring, which Sam is not impressed by. It turns black, which means he's tense, harassed. She tells him to call her, and she will turn it blue. To which Sam smiles and then gets up to walk away. Sam wanders around the set, and I'm wondering why they aren't leaving, why they're still sticking around, because as far as I'm aware, these guys just quit this movie. For that matter, isn't the shot done with? They're not set up to film anymore. So why is everybody still dancing? Is this like a disco / movie set or what? I'm not sure what's going on here. But anyway, Sam finds Al dancing in the middle of the crowd at the 8-minute and 10-second mark. Meanwhile, Chris is meeting a girl named Shannon, played by Kelly Williams. Kelly Williams has had a pretty decent career with 62 credits, including 145 episodes of The Practice, 2 episodes of Scrubs, which is another favorite series of mine, 48 episodes of Lie to Me, which is all 3 seasons of that show. In addition to that, she has 9 directorial credits to her name on television shows. As Sam and Al overlook what's going on the bottom floor, we hear the director's voice, which I guess means that they are in fact still shooting. Sam says that being here is the worst thing imaginable because here's another decade that Sam is not a fan of. Sam doesn't seem to like any of the decades he's been in so far. Meanwhile, Al is definitely a big fan of disco, and he's digging the fact that Sam is in this location. Sam is on the set of a low-budget disaster movie titled Disco Inferno, which is where the episode gets its title. For the record, that seems to be a completely made-up movie, as I can't find any listing for that in the Internet Movie Database, except for one in 1998, which is clearly not this movie. Sam ends up asking, "What does Ziggy say I'm here to do?" And Al, who's distracted by all the disco dancing and the disco music, can't give him an answer because Ziggy apparently crashed. And since he got him back online, Ziggy has been acting very strange, including extra zeros to people's paychecks, resulting in the staff, half of them at least, rushing out on vacation. And Sam asks, "Well, why didn't you go?" And of course the answer is, because he has to be available to Sam, to not give him any information whatsoever and be basically useless, but hey, it's touching nonetheless. Before Ziggy crashed, however, he did come up with one detail. Or rather, she came up with one detail. And that is the fact in the next couple of days, Chris is going to die. But he doesn't know when, where, or how. Well, once again, thanks, Al. You're a giant help. So basically, Sam has to prevent Chris from doing anything at any time that might lead to his death. During the course of this conversation, a memory seems to occur to Sam Beckett. He realizes that he had a big brother in Tom. But Sam doesn't remember any details. So he asks Al, where is he? What is he doing? And Al can't tell him that information because of the rules. And you know, I'm not entirely sure that's why Al doesn't tell him here. I think that Al doesn't want to tell him because he doesn't want to reveal the fact that Tom is dead. He doesn't want to break that news. Even though at one point Sam knew that information, but during his leaps, his brain got Swiss cheese and he doesn't really remember his life. I think if Tom were alive, Al would have been a little bit more forthcoming. Sam tries pushing him on him, but Al tells him, hey, just worry about your little brother down there, who is going to die in the next couple of days. We cut to Sam, outside by the truck, by himself. A woman who's coming out of her trailer takes the opportunity to hit on Sam, which leads to Sam looking himself in the mirror and admiring himself. He is a fine-looking man at that. We hear Chris come out with his father, their father, and he says he's not going to let that hack get them hurt or killed or worse, and it's not his fault. And I'm still a little confused why it took so long for them to actually vacate the set after quitting the movie. They kind of just meandered around for a while, which to me seems like that wouldn't be allowed after you quit a movie. Ray, Sam's father, and Chris argue back and forth. He seems to be really hard on his son. And Sam eventually says, hey, he's trying real hard. But his father comes back with, that's not good enough. One false move in this business and you're dead. You know that, but he won't listen. And Sam says, maybe if he didn't yell. And his father says, well, what do you want me to do? Baby him like his mother did? Sam's suggestion is to simply ease up on him a little bit. For the moment, Ray seems to take this advice into account and starts roughhousing with Chris and tells him that he has to trust him. He will get his start soon enough. And his father turns to Sam and says, "How about it, Sam? We got that big stunt on Earthquake in a couple of days. Think he's ready for it?" And this is kind of funny, because Sam was just defending his brother and trying to look out for him. And now he has to poo-poo the idea of Chris taking that stunt because he doesn't want him to die, as he knows he's going to do in a couple of days. It's kind of an awkward, weird situation to be in. Chris and Sam drive back, and Chris is pretty pissed off at Sam for not sticking up for him, not saying he was ready to take the stunt. And Chris apparently was racing back, and Sam kept telling him to try to slow down, because hey, maybe this is when Chris gets killed. Sam, in narration, says he couldn't really blame Chris, because he often got mad at Tom whenever he thought Tom was bossing him around. But the sleep is giving him a little bit of perspective on that relationship. He says, in his mind, that it comes with the territory, the job description of being a big brother. Sam ends up looking at a photo that we don't really get a good look at, but it brings back more memories, as Sam remembers that Tom played basketball in high school, and in fact won the Indiana State Championship. But he can't seem to remember much more than that, and this continues to frustrate Sam. Sam hears guitar music and goes to investigate. It turns out to be his brother Chris, who's in his room playing. Sam slowly enters as he watches his brother play. His brother, though, knows that he's there, and with an annoyed voice says, "Hey, there's a thing called knocking. You might want to try it sometime." And Sam knocks a couple of times on a desk. Cute Sam. And he tells his brother that he's good. And while I say that this is a pretty okay episode, not a great one, not a bad one, I do love the relationship between the two brothers here, and Sam attempting to be a big brother. Chris laments the fact that you can't make a living at it, and Sam asks, why not? And it's because Chris can't play the disco garbage, which Sam tells him he has a feeling it's going to die out in a few years. Chris ends up asking him, "How come you didn't give me my shot?" And Sam replies vaguely, he has his reasons. And Chris tries to argue his case. "Why don't you call Dad and tell him that I'm going to be the one who's going to do it?" And Sam rather firmly says, "Chris, I'm doing the stunt." And Chris says, "Wow, you're some big brother, always there when I need you." And Sam replies, "Hey, sometimes big brothers do things that little brothers can't quite understand." Sam ends up telling the story of his big brother. He coaches it in different words, saying it's some brothers that he knew, but it's effectively their relationship. Tom was an all-star athlete, and his little brother was good too, but his real talent was in physics, and his big brother knew it. So his big brother pushed him to follow his talents, to apply to MIT, and the kid ended up winning a Nobel Prize. Chris says, "Well, I'm not winning any Grammys." And Sam says, "You don't know unless you try." They both hear the bell ring. Chris goes to look out the window, and it turns out to be Shannon. And Chris gets all excited, saying he can't believe that she actually came. He asks Sam not to hit on her, and Sam is confused, asking, "Why would I hit on her?" "Well, maybe it's because you hit on everything that moves." Sam ends up promising, and he sounds amused while doing it. We cut to Sam and his new friends watching TV, which seems to be an SNL sketch, I believe, with Bill Murray, and I think that's Dan Aykroyd in there, as the Coneheads, which they would later make a movie of. They end up watching one of the late shows, and Sam says, "Oh yeah, this is great. This is where this guy trips over the desk." And Chris is all like, "How would you know that? This is live." And Sam lies and says, "Oh, well, there's a 3-hour delay. And I heard from somebody else that this happened." And sure enough, because Sam happens to be from the future, it does happen. He ends up spotting Al out in the balcony, and Sam makes an excuse and joins him. Al is wearing a disco outfit, and Sam is making fun of him for it. How is this any more outrageous than what Al usually wears during these leaps? Actually, from my perspective, it seems kind of conservative compared to most of Al's outfits. Sam ends up asking how Ziggy is doing, and as it turns out, he's not quite there yet. Right now, he's speaking in Japanese. Sam ends up asking a very vague question. How was he killed? And there's a moment where I think Al silently panics, and this is well done, by the way, and he asks, "Who?" Sam, annoyed, asks, "What do you mean, who? Chris, how was he killed?" And Al replies, "We're still checking on that. We only know that it happens in the next 2 days," which is the exact same information that you gave before. Once again, thank you for your useful information, Al. What are you doing here? Sam tells him that this kid has a future. Well, not if you don't prevent his death, he doesn't. Which is a tall order, since Al can't seem to tell you when it's going to happen. His future, according to Sam, seems to be in music. And Al asks him, "So you like this kid?" And Sam replies, Yeah, of course I do." And Sam says, "Yeah, he kind of reminds me of me. My drive to prove myself with my big brother Tom." And every time that Tom's name comes up, you get a subtle little reaction shot from Dean Stockwell, who seems to inside be filled with terror that Sam is going to remember more. As soon as he can change the subject, he does. He changes the subject to the fact that tomorrow he's going to be on the earthquake set. And I don't know what's up with this, because Al accurately names several actors from that movie, like Abe Nagardna, Lorna Green, but refers to Charleston Heston as Chuck Heston, or something along those lines. My best guess is that using Charleston Heston's name had some kind of rights issue involved. And I can't think of any other reason why they would do this. I'm not sure. If anybody else has any information on this, I would gladly hear it, because I'm interested in what the deal with this was, because he named every other actor accurately except for that one. Sam points out that he doesn't even know what he's doing on the set. He doesn't know the stunt at all. Well, gee, that sounds dangerous. We cut to Sam on the top of a very big building, who's getting terrified about doing the stunt, and he's wearing a ridiculous looking wig. A woman, who is an actor on the set, joins him, and apparently it's another one of Chad's conquests, who Sam doesn't remember, and because women can sometimes be spiteful, she ends up pushing Sam off the building, while falling herself. When who should try to save him but an elderly man with a mustache, who Al calls out, "It's Ben Cartwright!" And this moment confused the heck out of me, because I looked at the Internet Movie Database. Earthquake, 1974 movie, and there was no Ben Cartwright listed. Now, I'm going to say I wasn't really familiar with this movie, so it took some digging to finally realize that the actor that this is supposed to be is Lorna Green, not Ben Cartwright. Ben Cartwright is the character he played on Bonanza. And since he earlier referred to him as Lorna Green, I'm not sure why Al calls him Ben Cartwright in this moment. Other than he was probably a big Bonanza fan. I thought for a moment, before I did some digging, that this was just another moment of them making up an actor's name that wasn't really the actor that was in the film, which again would have been odd, because they list accurately several actors that are actually in the film. Except once again Charlton Heston. The elderly man tries to save him, but is unsuccessful, and Sam plummets to his supposed death. And by the way, I checked out this scene in the movie, and it is more or less accurate. An accurate recreation of what happened in that scene. Chris and Sam get home, and Chris is still pissed that he didn't get to do the stunt. And he says that he could have had his card right now. And Sam asks him, "Is that what you really want?" And Chris replies, "Of course, what do you think I've been working for all this time? How about your music?" But Chris thinks his music is just for kicks. But Sam pursues the issue, saying, "What I heard last night wasn't just for kicks." Chris fires back, "So, you gonna tell Dad that I'm gonna be a musician?" And Sam's like, "Dad? What does this have to do with Dad? This is your life." Chris seems to throw this back in his face, saying, "Well, what have you been doing the last couple of years?" And Sam, unconvincingly, I say, because he's not really Chad, says, "Hey, this is what I love to do, but this isn't you. If you want to impress Dad, do what you do best. It'll take a lot more courage than jumping off buildings. If you say so, Sam." This seems to calm down Chris, and he asks the question, "What do I know about the music business?" And we cut to a bar, a dance lounge, or singing lounge, something along those lines. Sam's friend that he met at the movie set is doing a favor for Sam, giving Chris his little shot. Of course, the only reason she's doing it is because she wants to sleep with Chad. We briefly see a shot of Chris and Shannon courting before we move into the bar area where Chad and Chris's dad sits. Sam is going to get him, telling him that soon his son will be on. Their dad is clearly already pretty drunk. He tells him that Chris is soon to be on, and their dad says that he can hear just fine from there. Sam tells him that all Chris wants is for his dad to be proud of him. And his dad, rather unconvincingly and drunkenly, says, "Oh, I am proud." And Sam fires back, "Well, why don't you show him? Go in there where he can see you." His father is unmoved. Sam, exasperated, starts to walk away and asks him, "Why are you doing this? What do you got against him?" And he feels that their mother raised him too soft, and now he's trying to course correct. He was born weak, premature. Sam finally gives up and walks away. Chris is up and starts to perform, and he seems to be doing pretty good. During the performance, their dad comes out to watch. He looks at Chris stone cold faced. Chris notices him, and his face lights up. But then their father walks away. Really hard to like this character at times during the course of this episode. Chris finishes up, and his new girlfriend and Sam congratulate him. But Chris doesn't seem as happy. Probably because their dad walked away. Chris goes and speaks to his dad, and all his dad offers him is to say that he thinks Chris is wasting his time. Sam tries to puff him up, saying, "Come on, Dad, you got more applause today than I did on my stunt." But Chris is unmoved by his brother's attempts to convince his dad that this is something that could be a good career path for Chris. And he says, forget it. He doesn't care. And his dad stands up and says, "Aw, come on, did I hurt your feelings?" and starts roughhousing with him. Eventually, Chris ends up punching his dad in the face, which is well earned, in my opinion. And as everyone exits the scene, their father smiles. He's finally impressed. We see Chris on the phone, calling the director of the film that Chad almost died on. He's looking for his chance. Sam goes home to look for Chris and doesn't find him. He's looking at a picture, which is of Chris and his brother Chad, and he smiles. And we hear Al's voice saying, "Cute kids." Sam says that he needs to get out of here, that there's something about this week that is driving him crazy. And Al's bearing throughout this scene seems to suggest that he knows Sam is eventually going to remember the details of his brother's time and his death. Al asks him if Chris is giving him a hard time, and Sam replies, "No matter what, he doesn't listen to me." Well, I don't know, Sam. He got up on that stage. He took his shot. So that indicates to me a little bit that he's listening at least a little bit to you. Al comes back with, "Sometimes it's tough being a big brother." And Al is very still in this scene. Dean Stockwell does a lot of acting with his eyes. And Sam tells him, "Yeah, I didn't listen to my big brother either. I didn't realize that he had my best interests at heart. And by the time I had figured it out, it was too late. Because," and this is the moment that Sam realizes that Tom is dead. We see the sadness in Dean Stockwell's eyes. He really is great in a very subtle way in this scene. Sam pleads with Al to tell him the truth. And Al says that, yeah, Tom is dead. He was killed in Vietnam. Sam walks away, and Al says, "This was the one part of your memory that I hoped you would never get back." Sam goes and finds their dad. He's looking for Chris because he didn't come home last night. Sam says he's worried about him. Probably because he knows he's supposed to die in a couple of days, which has to be around this point. His dad is unconcerned, saying, "Well, if I know my boys, he's probably out with some tale. He'll show up sooner or later." And Sam's like, "What makes you so sure?" And his dad says, "What else is he gonna do? Be a musician?" His dad replies, "Hey, we went through all this all night. Or last night, rather." No you didn't. You really didn't." And Sam says, "No, we didn't settle it. Chris was great last night." His father tells him, "Yeah, sure he was good." And Sam says, "Well, he needed to hear that from you." And his dad says, "Hey, just because he was good last night doesn't mean I wanted him to go and ruin his life." And Sam tells him, "That's exactly what you were doing by forcing him to be a stuntman." His father seems to be coming around, saying he doesn't know, but sometimes it seems like he's doing exactly what his father did to him, to Chris. And that's true. We definitely do repeat patterns. I'm not really thrilled with how this revelation is written or acted. It seems just a tiny bit on the nose for my tastes. But all in all, a valid point. Your granddad was a stuntman, so I became one, because I had to prove to him that I could. And this seems to click something in Sam's head. He says, kind of like Chris needing to prove himself by doing the fireman stunt. Sure enough, that's exactly where Chris is. And it's amusing to me that Peter Ornati is basically the same charming fellow that he is on This Is Us. And by that I mean not charming at all. Kind of a jerkhole. Chris ends up introducing his girlfriend Shannon to the director. Shannon isn't so sure that this stunt is a good idea, but Chris insists on doing it. Chris and their dad arrive on set. They run from their car. Just as the director yells action, the stunt goes wrong. Chaos is on the set. Chris is trapped. Sam is trying to find Chris. Al is helping him by calling to Sam because he knows where Chad is. He tells Sam to follow his voice. Chris, his leg is pinned. Sam gets the beam off of him and then gets him out of the scene. Chris has a broken leg. Sam drags him off the set and outside, where the paramedics await. Sam ends up hanging off his new friend that he met at the beginning of the episode. He points out that even after being exposed to all that heat, his mood ring has turned blue. And Sam says, "Well, I guess I'm in a good mood." And he kisses his friend, who's been waiting for that all episode long. Their father ends up punching the director, which, by the way, I think I said that the director got punched earlier in this episode. As it turns out, I remembered that wrong. That punch occurs here. Anyway, we cut to a scene of the family and Shannon together, watching TV. Sam ends up encountering Al in the kitchen. "Hiya, Sam. How you doing, pal?" And Sam replies, "You tell me. Why haven't I weeped yet?" Well, maybe because there's still some unfinished business. Sam talks about how he can't quite remember all the details of his brother. And eventually, Al says to him, "I shouldn't do this, but..." And he brings out a picture of Tom and Sam together. He tries to touch the picture, but of course he can't, because it's only a hologram. And Al tells him sorry, but he'll keep the picture until Sam comes home. Al urges him to go sit with the family and enjoy the game, and Sam does so, while Al Calbici stays behind and looks saddened. Whoever team these people are rooting for loses, and their father turns off the game. Sam comes out at exactly that moment, and Chris says that the cast is driving him nuts. His father tells him that he'll get it off soon enough. And Sam asks, "Then what?" His dad replies, "He's got his card. He'll come work for us." And Sam asks, "What about his music?" And Shannon pipes up to say, "Yeah, he's really good." His dad says, "Yeah, I guess he's an okay stuntman." And Sam says, "Hey, look, no offense to Chris, but he shouldn't be a stuntman. Any more than Gerald Ford," and Sam doesn't finish the sentence. Maybe he's going to say any more than Gerald Ford should be president. But he goes on to say that Chris's future is in the music. And his dad says, "Oh, so now you know the future, huh?" Sam, or rather Al, watching the news, notes that this is when Gerald Ford takes a trip down the stairs. Sam says he does know the future. He uses the inside information from Al to report that Ford is going to trip down the stairs, which apparently happened before. Everybody in the room is skeptical. And Sam says to his father, "I will bet Chris's future that I do know what's going to happen. I say that Ford is going to trip down those stairs, and if I'm right, you get behind Chris being a musician." And his dad asks, "Well, what if you're wrong?" And Sam says, "I get behind him being a stuntman." And Chris is objecting, and he should be. Hey, wait a second, this is my future. And Sam says, relax, I know what I'm doing. Their dad takes the bet. Sam sits in front of the TV and quietly asks Al, are you sure this is where he trips? But Al is less confident. Sam watches in suspense. And just at the bottom, Gerald Ford does indeed trip, causing everybody to laugh. Sam gets up and looks at his little brother, who smiles at him and then points at him. And Sam gives him the thumbs up, and then he leaps. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the episode. An okayish episode. I enjoyed the big brother, little brother dynamic that Sam got to live through. And I also enjoyed the Tom stuff, as well as Dean Stockwell's subtly brilliant performance in this episode. Next week, we got the Americanization of Machiko. I don't remember how to pronounce that name. I will figure it out before I watch that episode and record a video on it. I remember liking it, but we'll see how it flies in the modern era. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Kormam Productions. You can join my Kormam Productions Facebook page. You can buy something from the Kormam Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as myself. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to my channel. This is Dave from Kormam Productions, signing off.